Hey there, Dave Prowse here. Quick video on VIM. Just going to introduce it and show it a little bit. And the reason being, I use VIM a lot in the field, and I use it a lot in my courses and webinars. So just a quick introduction on it. VIM is VI improved. Well, let's go back into history. VI was pretty much the original text editor for Unix systems built back in the 1970s. And it's still heavily used. But Vim is a text editor that improves upon it, gives it more functionality, makes it slightly easier to use, a little bit more user accessible. And Vim is used by tons and tons of people, millions. So it's a text editor, and it's used on many different computing platforms. We're talking Windows, Linux, Mac OS, and so on. I'll be showing this on a Linux system. It's very useful to programmers, developers, system administrators, anyone who wants to make a text file or program or work with configuration files and so on. So let's show Vim real quick. I'm working on Debian Linux, and I've opened a terminal, and you can see I'm logged in here as dpro. So let's show it. All we have to do is type Vim and press enter, and we can open up the text editor. Press enter, and you can see here it is Vim, VI improved, and we can see the version number. We can see the creator and a couple of basic commands. For example, :Q will exit out of the program. Now, for those of you that are new to Vim and VI, this kind of stuff may seem a little cryptic, but you get used to it real fast, and you'll find that the advantages of Vim are awesome and can be very helpful to you. But at first, it's like, no, we don't do file save. We don't do close with Control-X or anything like that. We're using :Q to close out. :help to find out more information to get the online help for this. Now, any command that you type will show up down here in the bottom left-hand side. So if I wanted to get out of the text editor, which I do, I'll type :Q and press enter. And that brings us back to the terminal or the command prompt, whatever you're working in your system. Now, Vim is installed on some systems. On others, it's not. You can install it on Mac OS. You can install it on Windows, although a lot of these systems are coming with it now. So you can check first just by typing Vim. If you don't have it in Linux, for example, I'm on Debian Linux, we could do an apt install Vim. Or if you're on, say, CentOS or Red Hat or Fedora, you would do a DNF install Vim, or whatever package manager you're using for your distribution. And it's easy to install. It's open source and free and very accessible. All right, so that's a little bit about Vim. There's the basics for you. Again, text editor used on many different computing platforms, very useful to programmers, systems administrators, and so on. It has three modes that you work in, three main modes. The first is command mode. Command mode is the default. When you first open the editor, you are in command mode, and it's designed to allow you to type commands in that bottom left-hand side, which can modify, say, how the file looks or how the program works. Right? So command mode. The second is insert mode. This is where we do most of our work. This is where we actually type information into Vim. And you can press I to get into insert mode, among other things. Then we have visual mode. And visual mode allows you to change how things are oriented, how they look, and so on. So, for example, you could do cut, copy, and paste while in visual mode. You could highlight information in visual mode and so on. Now, if you're working in insert mode or visual mode and you want to go back to command mode, just press the escape key and that'll bring you back to that default command mode. So that's the three main modes that you need to know for Vim. Let's talk about creating files. It's so easy to create a file. You could do it right when you type the vim command. So for example, you could do vim and the name of your file, whatever you want it to be. In Linux, we don't need an extension, so we could just create a file. But in other systems, you may need a specific extension, or if you're working within a particular shell, you may want a specific extension. If you're working in Linux and I'm making a shell script, I'll normally add .sh to the end. Or you can add whatever extension you need for your scripting language or for your programming language or for whatever type of file type it needs to be, configuration files, whatever. So you are not limited. You can really work with just about anything in Vim. And there's plenty of plugins for Vim as well, just in case your particular language or scripting language is not supported out of the box. But you don't need an extension at all if you're working in Linux, and we'll show this now. Okay, open up that terminal once again, and let's create a file. I'm going to call this test file with no extension, just a plain test file. Press enter, and we have a blank file that we can now start working with. Now you see the name at the bottom here. It says test file. It's a new file, just created it. All right, and you see the cursor up here. It's ready to accept information. And underneath you see tildes. Tildes are just simply unused lines in the file. That's it. So let's make a basic file. To do that, we have to go into insert mode. We have to go into insert mode. And there's a couple ways to do that. We can type I on the keyboard. And when we press I, you see in the bottom left-hand side, it says insert. You can also use the A key or the insert key. And there's ways to insert specific information in one shot with other keys as well. Okay. When we're done typing, escape to get out and back to command mode, where we can then save the file and so on. So let's make a quick file. Press I for insert, and we'll just do a basic echo command. Say echo Vim is great. And that's it. We have a file. We'll press escape. And then we want to save this file. Now you have a lot of options here. Simple option to save it is to type :W. Now let's say you hadn't named the file before. Well, then you would just have to type in the file name here at the bottom after the W. That's it, whatever that file name is. But I've already named the file, so I can type :W and press enter to save. Now again, these things might seem a little cryptic, but I'm showing you the basic ones that you need to know to get around Vim, and you'll get used to them quick. It says at the bottom, test file has been written. One line, 19 characters. That's what that means down there. One line, 19 characters. That's it. And if you are done and you've saved it, you can do a :Q to get out. Now there's a lot of shortcuts as well. We could have done :WQ to save and quit out at the same time. You could also press Shift ZZ at the same time to save and quit. That's Shift and 2 Z's, holding the Shift key down and pressing this Z key twice. So however you like to do it, and I'm sure there's other ways as well. All right, so I'm going to do :Q to quit out now, and we're done. We're back to the terminal. So it's a real basic test file, and I could run that test file to see it work if I make it executable first. And we'll do that on test file. And we'll run it, /test file. And look, it says Vim is great. So if you're not familiar with the echo command, it's pretty simple. It just prints the content that you typed in there on the screen. Or it can print that information to wherever else you want it to go. So I use the echo command a lot. Also printf, and just ways to print information. All right, so that is just a basic file. That's how it works. It's that easy to work with it. Let's show another file that I have here. I'm going to go into this, And this is my super ping script. And let's take a look at the actual script, which is called superping.sh. This is a shell script. And let's take a look at that. I'm going to do that by typing vim superping.sh. So not only does Vim create files, you can obviously modify files with it as well. We'll press enter. And here is that script. You can see it starts with what's known as the shebang. Shebang tells us what shell we're working in for this particular script. And in this case, it's bash. I've got some comments here. And then I've got some commands, some print statements, which are similar to the echo statement that I showed. And we have a while loop and an if statement and some additional printed information. So this is a basic script that I created, 24 lines, 945 characters of code. And that's just an example here of a file that you might be working in this case, a bash shell script. There's another shortcut to get out real fast. If you want to quit, we said :Q, but another one I use a lot is Shift and hold down the Shift key and press ZQ at the same time. So Shift ZQ, that exits out, and I use that all the time. There's tons of shortcuts like this. And if you get a little confused with some of the key commands and shortcuts, there's plenty of cheat sheets that are out there. If you just do a search for Vim cheat sheet, you'll find all kinds of good stuff out there that you can kind of learn from a little bit. But you don't need that much to work in Vim. You really don't need all that much. Okay, so that is a little bit about creating files and modifying them as well. All right, let's show just a couple basic options that you can do when you're in command mode. And so I've got a couple here. You can set what color scheme you want to use with :color and the name of the color scheme. There's lots of color schemes that you can work with that are built into Vim, and we'll show a couple of those. Or you can turn off syntax coloring altogether with this command, :syntax off. And another one that I constantly use is line numbering. I didn't show that before, but I'm going to turn that back on. It's :set number. And you can turn these on temporarily for the file that you're working on, or you can turn them on permanently within the vimrc configuration files. And I'll show that as well, because that's something you definitely want to see. So let's go back into our terminal here. And we'll take a look at a couple of these options. You know what? I'm going to go back into this superping.sh script. Press enter. And you can see there is a lot of coloring going on here. And this is based on the solarized dark color scheme. And that is kind of going beyond the main color schemes that are built into Vim. But we can change the color schemes for the text. And so we can press : type in color, and change the color scheme to whatever we want. A couple of the color schemes I like that are built in include desert. And you can see that that changed not only the text, but also the background. This is a really pretty easy on the eyes color scheme, regardless of whether you're in dark mode or light mode. And a lot of programmers like this. I like it too. So this will kind of be my default if I'm working in a big configuration file. If I want color at all, that is. There's others though. There's a bunch of them. There's Ron, and then there's Zellner, and a whole bunch. And you can find a whole list of these. You can find a list of these in a variety of places, depends on your platform. But those color schemes, say in Linux, you'll find those schemes in /usr, /share, /vim, /vimnn/colors, or you might find them in vim a2/colors, and that path can change over time as the program grows and changes. So there's a whole list there that you might be interested in. You can also turn the color scheme off altogether, and we would do that with syntax off. That's a colon syntax off. And then everything will be white if you're in dark mode, or black if you're in light mode. That's syntax off. If you want the coloring back, just syntax on, turn it back on, and get whatever color scheme you want. Okay. One more thing that I like to do. Well, there's tons of stuff that I do in Vim. This video is just scratching the surface. It's not even scratching the surface of Vim and the power of Vim. But one of the things that I definitely do for my systems is I set line numbers. You could do that temporarily in the file by doing a colon set number. And that'll turn on the line numbers here. Let's change the color scheme a little. I'll set the line numbers here so you know what line you're working on for each of these items. All right, so line numbering is super important if you're working with large configuration files or if you're doing developing. You definitely want to have that on. If it's on and you want it turned off, set no number, which is not really as intuitive, but set no number will turn it off. It's off persistently on this system. I want it to run all the time. So I'm going to exit out, Shift ZQ to exit out. That exits out, but it doesn't save any changes because I didn't want to save anything there. I want to make the changes here so that numbering will be on all the time. Now you could do that persistently for the local user. You would have to go to the user's home directory. Now this is for Linux. It's going to be different for Windows and Mac OS and so on. But for Linux, we go to the home directory and then we modify the .vimrc file. And we can do that with Vim. So we do a vim.vimrc, press enter, and you'll see that I have some information here. This is special for Vim on this system, and it's making use of the solarized color scheme, which I downloaded for my system and also downloaded for Vim specifically. And I'm turning syntax on here. I'm setting the background to dark mode, and the color scheme is solarized. Okay. If I wanted to add line numbers here for this user, I could do it. I would do set number. That's it. And then save it. And we could save that with a colon WQ or a Shift ZZ and save that information. Okay. Now, if we go back and we open up a file, like before we created test file, if we do a Vim on test file again, it'll show the line numbering here. That's it. Now you can also change this globally. You'd have to do it as root, but you could do this. You could modify the vimrc global file, which affects all users. And you would do that by doing a vim/etc/vim/vimrc. No dot this time. And this is the main file for Vim configuration. And we could add line items here and add numbering or turn the syntax on a certain way or have a certain color scheme and so on. Again, this would affect all users if you do it this way here. And you would have to do it as root. You'd have to do it as an administrator. But I've already done it within my .vimrc file, which is stored right in my home directory. I've already added that here. So we've got the numbering for my user account. And that's all I really need here. Okay. So that's it. That's a little bit about Vim and some basic options and changes. Now, again, this is just a primer on Vim. You can go crazy with this. You can add so many plugins into Vim and create so many additional configurations in .vimrc. I mean, it is endless what you can do. There's so many shortcuts and time savers and so on. I'm just showing you a basic account with a basic setup. So That's a little bit about Vim, and that's about it. Hopefully you'll choose to use it. And by the way, there's derivatives of Vim as well. There's NeoVim and there's others. I still prefer Vim over anything else that's out there right now. You may also use programs like Nano. You might have seen other editors like Nano, which is fine if you want to use it, but programs like that usually don't have as much support for certain types of syntax and programming languages and so on. For example, I work with a lot of JSON files, and Nano just doesn't really have the support for that, whereas Vim does. There's lots of other text editors out there too. There's Sublime and there's Atom and it just goes on and on. I prefer Vim to all of these. And so it's one of my go-to tools. So you can find out more. If you go into Vim, you can do a :help directly within Vim, or you can run the Vim tutor. That's one word, Vim tutor. And Vim tutor has tons of information, and you can learn a whole lot from this, and it's broken down by lessons. So that's my recommendation, is to go to the Vim tutor to find out more information about it. And then if you have really in-depth questions or really specific questions, then you could go to Stack Exchange and superuser.com and so on, and you'll find most of the time your question has probably been answered by someone who's a Vim expert. So definitely check it out. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching.